The regular meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, July 10th, 2023 will be called to order at 7:03. So we're only a few minutes behind today. At this time, please join me for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please bow your heads. Tonight, we express our gratitude to the residents of this city who have been entrusted to lead. We thank you for the opportunity to serve. May we look upon those in our community whose lives we can help with honour. May our sacrifice lead to accomplishing things meaningful during our time as elected officials. Tonight, help us embrace this challenge by guiding us to lead with integrity and common sense, by giving us wisdom to make intelligent decisions, by giving us courage to make tough decisions, and by giving us the character to make the right decisions. I'll leave you with these words from entertainer and entrepreneur Oprah Winfrey. Do the one thing you think you can't do. Fail at it. Try again. Do better the second time. The only people who never tumble are those who never mount the height wire. Thank you. Amen. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney. Here. Alderwoman O'Neill.
Present.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson. Alderman Shandelmeyer.
Here electronically.
Thank you. Alderman Gay. Alderman Savage.
Present.
Alderman Arnett.
Present.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
This time I entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Aye.
Alderman Shandelmeyer.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is ceremonial items, beginning with ID 12323, Proclamation, Recreation and Parks Month.
Okay, I'm going to get our new director to come up with me. Bring the team. I'll meet you guys up here. Parks and Rec powerhouse right here. If anyone hasn't been to the amazing Pickpoint Rec Centre or enjoyed some of our wonderful parks, please get out there. We have some of the best. So I'm going to present you this proclamation. Whereas Recreation and Parks is an integral part of our communities throughout America, including the city of Annapolis. And whereas Recreation and Parks promotes health and wellness, improving the physical and mental health of people who live near parks. Whereas recreation and parks promote time spent in nature, which positively impacts mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being and alleviating illnesses such as depression, attention deficit disorder, and Alzheimer's. Whereas recreation and parks encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking, trails, swimming pools, and many other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas Recreation and Parks programming and education activities, such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas Recreation and Parks increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas Recreation and Parks is fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas recreation and parks is essential and adaptable infrastructure that makes our community resilient in the face of natural disasters and climate change. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the City of Annapolis joins the US House of Representatives and the State of Maryland in acknowledging the importance of recreation and parks in our community and affirming their importance during the month of July. Now therefore I, for Gavin Buckley, Mayor of the City of Annapolis, and the Annapolis City Council do proclaim July 2023 as Recreation and Parks Month. Thank you.
Oh, God help us. Wow. Oh, sorry.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is ID 12423, still under ceremonial items. This is City Council citation honoring the Canton Restaurant.
All right, I think yes. Please come forward from the Canton Restaurant. We are happy for you, but we are so sad we're going to lose you. So.
We're gonna be hungry.
Just let you read it.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. How you doing? How you doing? Thank you. Cool. Right.
All right.
So,
On behalf of the
just gonna get you
residents of the
this.
City of Annapolis, we are pleased to confer upon you this City Council citation in recognition of your celebrated family-run Canton restaurant for more than 63 years. In 1960, Wong family patriarch Charles opened the restaurant, at the time the only Chinese food restaurant in Annapolis. Over the years, the family-run operation has served delicious food and kept 4 generations of the Wong family in business. June 28, 2023 was a sad day for West Annapolis neighborhood. It was the home to the Canton restaurant when Benjamin and Lisa Wong closed the doors to retire. We thank you for your many years of dedicated service to deliciously feeding Annapolis residents and visitors. And thank you for all of you have done, and best of luck in your well-deserved retirement. Presented to the Canton restaurant on this day, July 10th, 2023.
Yeah, we play. Would you, and we'd love you to say a few words, would you, because you really are an Annapolis institution, and I think people would like to hear from you. If anyone, no, just a couple of words. No.
My brother and I were there when it opened and there when it closed.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with an update from the mayor.
Good evening. I'd like to acknowledge the absence of Alderwoman Sheila Finlayson, who suffered a tragic loss in her immediate family over the weekend. This is a most difficult time, and I wanted to say publicly, Sheila, that we are thinking of you and holding you close in our hearts. We love you and are so sorry for your loss. Additionally, I'd like to note that Alderman Gay lost his beloved grandmother, Mary Elizabeth White, whose services were over the weekend. Mrs. White was an amazing woman who led her family with wisdom and love. We know losing her is difficult, so we want to share our love and sympathy with Alderman Gay and his family. If you could all please join me in taking a moment of silence and holding them close in our hearts. Thank you. Thank you all. Last week, we celebrated Independence Day as a city. We hosted Governor Wes Moore and First Lady Dawn Moore in the parade and enjoyed some amazing fireworks. I'd like to thank our city workers for their outstanding job that they did to ensure everything went smoothly and safely, from our police to our OEM to DPW staff to the harbour master and her team. Thank you for all your efforts and ensuring that everything was tidy and back together downtown by Wednesday morning. I hope our residents enjoyed the day and that they can share their appreciation too. Coming up this week and next week, we have 4 public in-person meetings to present the draft of the city's comprehensive plan. Please come out, take a look at the plan, and let us know your thoughts. Remember, this is a draft. We really would appreciate everybody's input. The events are as follows. July 11th at the Pip Moyer Recreation Centre, July 12th at the Hillsmere Library, July 17th at Mount Olive Church in Parole, and July 18th at the Bush Library on West Street. All events begin at 6 p.m. Expect the meetings to last around 2 hours. Annapolis's own Major League Soccer team, the Annapolis Blues, are wrapping up their inaugural season this week. They sent me a note earlier today saying they averaged 7,749 fans per regular season home game. They are preparing for the playoffs this Wednesday in Annapolis. I think it's Wednesday or Thursday, one of those days.
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Okay, someone gave me a Thursday, so thank you. Tickets are available if you want to cheer on your home team. Congratulations to Blues, and on Wednesday I hope to hear all of you in Annapolis reverberating with one thing: goal! All right. Hopefully a bunch of times. And lastly, a quick reminder that we have one more City Council meeting in July 24th, and then we have a recess for August, including standing committee meetings. After that, we will return on September 11th. Now, please, let's get on with the meeting. Thank you all. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is report by committees.
Alderman O'Neill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Transportation Committee met on June 22nd. There we discussed and gave a favorable recommendation to Transportation Board new member Edward Bergman. And we postponed discussion on the 04922 legislation. We do have a meeting coming up this Wednesday, July 12th at 4 p.m. Pretty packed agenda. We are talking about the draft comprehensive plan as it discusses transportation, as well as further discussion on 049.
Thank you. Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Public Safety Standing Committee will be meeting rescheduled for Wednesday, July 19th from 3 to 5 p.m. here in council chambers. The following topics will be Annapolis Police Department topics: inspection audit, CALEA accreditation update, body-worn cameras in the chief's recent meeting on Capitol Hill with nationwide police chiefs, FBI Academy, marijuana training for officers, workload study update, Leadership Anne Arundel, September 2023 Police Law Enforcement Women's Conference in Annapolis, organizational reorg chart, including resources, Ring Cameras Neighborhood Watch, drones, grant manager and grant writer positions, Facebook Live Protect and Serve broadcasts, Fall 2023 City Council work sessions, which will be ABD training with council, which will be akin to Office of Laws recently, and the various topics that could be covered. Also, the Anne Arundel Conflict Resolution Center, Violence Interrupters Program, MML and MACO, as well as County Partnership.
Brooks wants to say something.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Chandlemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Economic Matters Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, July 19th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Environmental Matters Committee will be meeting this Thursday at 3 p.m. We don't have any legislation before us, but we will be getting a report from the comprehensive plan, from the Planning and Zoning on the comprehensive plan, focusing on the environmental and resilience components to that.
Thank you. Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Committee meeting on July 5th was canceled out of not having really significant legislation, if any, to review. But our next meeting is Wednesday, July 19th at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Audit Committee will be meeting on Monday, July 17th at the ungodly hour of 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll be meeting virtually.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is comments by the general public.
Cynthia.
I think we need to bring the sign-up sheet down, please.
You need the sheet.
Well, I know who our first speaker is, my favorite mayor in America. We are honored to have Mayor Schmoke here as the first speaker signed up to speak today. Please come forward, Mayor Schmoke. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I was here a decade ago to present a plan based upon the work of a City Dock Advisory Committee. That plan was entitled Annapolis City Dock Master Plan, but I often emphasize the subtitle to that plan, which was a framework to guide improvements and redevelopment. It was not a static plan. It was not presented as the final answer, and I'm just pleased that the work of the citizens who participated in that advisory committee actually helped to provide some of the building blocks upon which the City Dock Action Committee has created the Reimagine City Dock plan. I emphasize the difference between the action committee and the advisory committee because there was a word that appears often in the action committee's plan that was not in ours, and that word is urgency. There is, in my view, a need to make this plan, the Reimagine City Dock plan, a reality now that it's more critical, I believe, than 10 years ago when we were working on the advisory effort because obviously global weather pattern changes and things of that nature. I had the privilege of learning a great deal about City Dock, its history, the various conflicting constituencies as it related to City Dock. It was similar to efforts that we had in Baltimore during the 12 years that I was mayor. We dealt with the Inner Harbor, which is also kind of the crown jewel for Baltimore, as City Dock is for Annapolis. And in dealing with both the Advisory Committee on City Dock and the work that we did in 12 years that I was mayor, I recognize that there are really no final victories, that you always have to make changes, you have to redevelop, rethink the plan. And I'm no engineer, but I've taken a look at some of the recommendations in this Reimagine plan and the ordinance before this council. I believe it moves the City Dock, the city itself, in the right direction. And I just wanted to come by as a person that's recovering from participating in this work and figuratively pulling out a few arrows from that experience. I just think that what you have in front of you now moves the city in the right direction, and I commend you for your consideration.
Thank you so much, Mayor Schmoke. Thank you. Mayor Schmoke, while we've got you, I'm going to have to, We don't get to see you very often. Alderman Pindell-Charles would like to say something? Yeah.
Yes, I would. I'd be remiss, and I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to thank Mayor Schmoke, who in 1983 was elected as the state's attorney for Baltimore City and took a chance on a young attorney, me, to be a prosecutor in his office, and I will be forever grateful. It would change the entire trajectory of my life as well as my family's life. I started in 1983 and retired in 2004. And I just want to thank you publicly for everything that you've done for me and many of those prosecutors who came through your office as well. But thank you so much.
Mayor, you see I had good.
Look at that. Well done. Thank you. So we will be having a separate hearing on that legislation, 01523. If anyone is not speaking on that legislation that would wish to come forward for the public hearing now, I see one person here. Is Janet Katz here for that? Are you here for the public hearing on 01523 or for something separate? Okay, please come forward. State your full name and address.
Janet Katz, 143 Spa Drive, Ward 1. The shots you just heard were not from the 4th of July fireworks. Rather, it was the alarming sound of gunfire that many residents in Wards 6 and 8 heard the early morning hours of this past Saturday. All too often throughout our city, we hear bullets blaze and bear witness to the elevated levels of criminal activity affecting all of us. In fact, since the beginning of this council's administration in November 2021, there have been 39 verified incidents of shots fired, 39 shootings require emergency hospital care, 3 axe attacks, 9 stabbings, 8 murders, and countless robberies, assaults, and carjackings. Even our fearless city police officers are not immune to crime in this city. As The Patch, Eye on Annapolis, and other local media have reported, Annapolis police were assaulted 3 times, trying to stop illegal fireworks being discharged on July 4th while responding to an earlier incident of shots fired. And then a suspect attempted to disarm a police officer, which, if successful, could have proved deadly. Calls for more officers may help curb some of the crime, but how can you recruit candidates when they know the disdain expressed for their roles and increased limitations on enforcement abilities? Not to mention the quick release of suspects who, after arrest, are back out on the streets, repeating criminal behavior. Targeting the Second Amendment rights of responsible citizens is not the solution. I implore you to prove that Saturday morning shootout was produced from legally owned firearms. The citizens of Annapolis know what's escalating crime in our city, but do you? And what is the council's plan to address it?
Thank you. Next up is Joe Palat.
Good evening. Joe Pilot, president of the Annapolis Professional Firefighters. We use 914 Bay Ridge Avenue for an address. The Annapolis Professional Firefighters, IAFF Local 1926, and the City of Annapolis Fire Department would like to invite all of the City Council and the Mayor's Office to Fire Ops 101. It's an event offering elected and appointed officials, as well as select media members, a chance to step into a firefighter's boots for a day. Local 1926 and the Annapolis Fire Department together have long advocated for adequate staffing levels and for firmly established specialty skill resource programs to ensure the citizens and the visitors to our city receive premier professional help when emergencies occur. Fire Ops 101 gives invitees a chance to experience exactly why those resources are needed and to see how personnel from our department come together to apply their skills in dynamic and often dangerous environments. Our event will feature the latest developments in fire, rescue, and emergency medical services, as well as some of the broader issues concerning firefighter safety, health, and wellness. Local 1926 personnel will construct controlled scenarios offering experience in these situations. Participants will get the chance to don protective clothing and equipment and will enter a live fire dynamics demonstration. In addition, participants will experience the capabilities of our technical rescue team, handle vehicle extrication equipment, and experience the capabilities of our Marine Operations Unit. This event promises to be exciting and informative and should provide some perspective on the shared mission between your fire department and our labor organization. We would be honored by your participation, for all of you. If you feel you're physically unable to participate, we welcome you to attend along with a family member or constituent who would be physically able to participate and then report back to you on their experience. I'll be passing out some folders that have a more overview of the program along with some additional documents pertaining to fire ops. I hope to see everyone there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Got a few questions on Annette.
Yes, could you please repeat the date, time, and place?
It's going to be October 20th, and it'll be at the U.S. Naval Academy Fire Training Facility.
Thank you. Time?
It'll be 8 a.m. God awful 8 a.m.
Well, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, anyone else like to come forward and speak on anything other than 01523? Please come to the microphone.
George Gallagher, 1212 Barwood Lane. We had an earlier speaker just talk about 39 shots fired incidents and also 39 shootings. But what does that actually mean? What it means is in the last 18 months, there has been a shots fired incident or a shooting every single week. The majority of them have been in the ward that I live in. Additionally, we've had 9 stabbings. One of those stabbings happened around the corner from my house where my daughter gets on the bus. We have a public safety crisis. This council has a lot of priorities, and they make them very clear. But priority number 1 has to be public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and speak? Please come forward now. Thank you all. Seeing no motion, I declare that public hearing closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is consent calendar, starting with appointments.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any objections to the consent calendar?
Need a roll call?
Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderman Shannon Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Aye. Alderman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. And the legislation for public hearing is 01523, building height and elevation limit exception for FEMA flood zones in Annapolis.
Thank you. We have a few people signed up to speak. Please come forward. Mike Thomasini, thank you.
Can I be added as a sponsor? Thank you.
Good evening, all. Mike Tomasini, 212 Eastern Avenue in Eastport, 21403. All of you, I think, know me. I'm an active and involved member of the small business community, also a member of the maritime business community. Speaking on this legislation because I think it's important for the next step of the City Dock process to move along. I've followed closely the City Dock Action Committee and their recommendations. I believe that the raising of the heights goes hand in hand with the raising of the floors, and that the two are hard to separate. If you want to build a building or a structure that's going to be a welcome facility for both boaters and for residents in the city and visitors alike, it can't be closed half the time because of high floodwaters, right? But at the same time, it's got to be a big enough building to accommodate all of the potential uses of that space. So I'm here to speak in favor of the ordinance, and I thank you all for your time and dedication on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Next up, Vince Leggett.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm the president of the Blacks of the Chesapeake Foundation, and our historical cultural vision for City Dock is very important to us. Our mission is to ensure that the contributions of generations of enslaved and free African Americans who worked as watermen, oystermen, crabbers, boat building, dock workers is not forgotten. The renewal of the City Dock is one of the most visionary chapters in the long and evolving story of the Annapolis waterfront. The city has a clear vision, developed in consultation with the community and many stakeholders, and I attended many of the envisioning sessions leading up to these recommendations. The overwhelming consensus to achieve the City Dock Action Committee speaks to qualify the plan and the importance of our future. Ordinance 1523 is ultimately about much more than just sea level rise and climate change. It's about community, culture, history, and creating access for everyone through a welcoming park, maritime center that celebrates all of our shared legacy. The City Dock plan will begin to change downtown by incorporating many parts of the story. Many of you participated in the UNESCO Port Marker Committee, Sites of Memory, looking at the transatlantic slave trade, preservation of the Waterman's Home, the Burtis House, to creating public recreation space and water access for children in all communities. Finally, the proposed Maritime Welcome Center we're very excited about, where there's an opportunity for everyone's story to be told from that latitude and longitude, and also a place where the electric ferry and other modes of transportation can go to other sites, including the soon-to-be Elktonia Heritage Park down in Annapolis Neck. So in conclusion, we recommend and we stand in favor of this important move for the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you. Next up, Rachel Robinson.
Good evening, everyone. Rachel Robinson for Historic Annapolis, 18 Pinckney Street. HA has consistently voiced support for O1523 over the last 3 months. Amendment of the zoning code so that new construction and substantial reconstruction within the city, and specifically in the historic district, will be in compliance with FEMA's base flood elevation and Annapolis's own flood protection elevation is an appropriate action. Our support for hazard mitigation and adaptation through an increase in height, however, is limited to sea level rise. HA is unwavering in our support of the City Dock project. As you all know, we have been a partner of the city in reimagining the future of City Dock for over a decade. This includes co-hosting the City Dock Action Committee. We are excited that the completion of the Hillman Garage allows for this next important phase of the City Dock redevelopment and resiliency to fully commence. Having watched O1523 very carefully and attended public hearings and private meetings with the city, 2 concerns remain. First, we initially raised the question about why this legislation and subsequent FEMA compliance are, at this time, limited to the City Dock section alone of Annapolis's AE zone. The Planning Department has continually made the case that this is meant to address the urgency of the City Dock project, with City Dock being well-studied and severely flooded, and to unlock the FEMA funding for the project. The staff report states on page 4 that the city would support the introduction of a similar ordinance that guides development in the city's other AE flood zones, end quote. And we support this and urge the council to enable universal FEMA compliance within Annapolis. Understanding that the administration is focused on City Dock only with O1523, we find the staff recommended clarification regarding site limits of the, and that's SITE, site limits of the City Dock project to be deficient. This legislation only targets citywide parcels related to the City Dock project. If that's the case, we request that the parcels be identified specifically in the legislation and on the map. Second, our reading of the legislation, the June 8th staff report, and the zoning code and map leads us to understand that the parcel occupied by the Burtis House, its 2 adjacent parcels, and the lots around Ego Alley are zoned Waterfront Maritime Conservation District. Per the WMC chapter of the zoning code, quote, in the WMC district, the historic district shall govern the regulation of structures within the historic district, provided that if there are any inconsistencies between this chapter and the historic district, the more restrictive shall prevail. Almost done. Given that the WMC height restriction is more stringent and would supersede the height limit for the historic district, we do not understand how O1523 addresses this condition if it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support. Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for the city attorney. Is the council regulate the rules and procedures of the Historic Commission?
Council.
You don't, the rules of the Historic Commission?
Well, if there was concern, as she just mentioned, about regulatory rules where the commission would be able to, carry out framework for structures, et cetera, would the council be able to overrule that, or is that already set in stone?
Well, the policies that undergird what they review and decide upon is the city code, and the city council can decide to waive or obviate anything in the code.
Just trying to get better understanding that.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, Melanie Hartwig Davis.
Hello, Mayor, Council. Thank you very much. My name is Melanie Hartwig Davis. I'm with HD Squared Architects, 79 West Street. We are your local resiliency experts helping with Burtis House, so it's very appropriate for me to come in at this point in time. The ordinance that is proposed is very important to the City Dock redesign, and we are not in opposition of that in any way. As it is explained to us, what she has presented, there is a conflict between the HPC and the WMC. However, it has been explained to us that we will be able to raise up and lift the Burtis House and stabilize it from flooding with this ordinance in effect. So we appreciate that from the height limits. However, as you know, the Burtis House floods on a regular basis, and I have been a trusted partner in working with Bryce and the administration and multiple city departments trying to establish exactly what that height is. We are concerned that the timing, I came in with the state of Maryland and funding and Preservation Maryland. And I'd like to state too that Laura Houston is listening live as the project manager for Preservation Maryland. So we came in order to stabilize and basically be, stewards that we need to be of the Burtis House as soon as possible, while the city and the city planning for City Dock and the funding are gathered. We can come in, step in, and we were originally planned to construct and raise the Burtis House this summer after commissioning week ended. There have been a number of roadblocks. I would like to say that although this ordinance is very beneficial to the entire City Dock plan, it does not help the Burtis House at this time. We will not be able to move forward with our state funding and with our construction because we have a piling foundation, and this ordinance is written to accommodate the elevated grade. So we are now in a predicament where we have to wait until the grade of the entire City Dock area is raised before we can perform the stabilization and secure Burtis House from future flooding. So I ask for consideration in that, and I ask that please reach out to myself at HD Squared Architects or Preservation Maryland as we work forward after this evening with a resolution that will address the urgency that Burtis House is experiencing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Annette? Melanie, Alderman Annette had a question.
Yes.
Yes, I've seen a flurry of emails today, and I'm really kind of confused. The city owns the Captain Burtis House and the ground underneath it. Do we not?
Yes, sir, the city does own it.
Okay, so I really wasn't aware that there was some independent contract work. I think we need to get more information. I saw elevations and plans in an email today, but I'm feeling woefully out of sync with all of that. And I do believe the Captain Burtis House should be developed as part of the overall City Dock plan, as I think you do too.
Mm-hmm.
So I sense there was some concern in your comments, and I can't quite figure out what it is. So I think we need more information.
Okay.
At some point.
I can make some clarification if that's okay, or would Alderman Savage like to say something?
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Savage?
If you have time to stay, I think we can get into this a little more if needed during the discussion of, second reader discussion of this ordinance.
Okay.
Certainly.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Melanie, thank you. Next up to speak is Joel Dunn.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Pleased to be here with you today. My name is Joel Dunn. I'm the president and CEO of the Chesapeake Conservancy. We're located over at 716 Giddings Ave. And many of you know the Chesapeake Conservancy has been a leading advocate for the establishment of a Chesapeake National Recreation Area that would bring the National Park Service status to the Chesapeake. It's hard to believe that Chesapeake Bay is not already more formally recognized by the National Park Service, but it's not. And the idea to connect or correct that error has been around for 30 plus years. And Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Sarbanes are working on a dream to make the Chesapeake a National Recreation Area and unit and establish that expands resources for environmental protection and makes it clear that the United States cherishes the Chesapeake Bay, the birthplace of American identity. Annapolis City Dock, including the Burtis House, will be a significant site for the Chesapeake National Recreation Area. It's Burtis House in particular is one of the oldest buildings in downtown Annapolis and a remnant of the Hell Point neighborhood to which it originally belonged, and the last waterman's house in the Chesapeake. So as such, the Chesapeake Conservancy is thrilled to see the long-awaited vision of the City Dock coming together. The plan makes our beloved City Dock stronger with protection against flooding and sea level rise, something I've been talking about for 17 years in this town. So it's pretty cool to see you guys working on this. This is a world-class park, world-class place, and a new maritime welcome center offering public access and interpretation of the Chesapeake Bay. Is just going to be awesome for everybody that comes here. So I understand that this ordinance for you but tonight is necessary for both urgent resiliency efforts and desperately needed to address our issues in town here, and especially for things like the Welcome Center to become a reality. So I encourage the council to adopt O1523 as the next step in building a world-class waterfront, complete with facilities and services for all Annapolitans and visitors who are so important to our local economy, our sense of place, and our access to this beautiful Chesapeake Bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up to speak, Brendan Greeley.
Good evening. Brendan Greeley. I live at 330 Dewey Drive. I am an economic historian, and my day job involves trying to convince the rest of the world that the first printing of the American dollar right here in Annapolis is an incredibly pivotal event in American history. I'm sure I find sympathy here in this room. I also, in Mayor Buckley's first term, helped work on an economic development plan, and I was part of the first several months of the City Dock Action Committee. The work that they have done since I left, I think we could all agree has been extraordinary. If any of you have important projects, I recommend that you bring me on board and then let me leave. That seems to be a really efficient way to get things done. But one of the things that I noticed working on the economic development plan, sort of as a lifelong resident of this city, somebody who's returned to raise a family here, there are two words that are very problematic in Annapolis because they mean a lot of different things to everybody. One of them is development and the other one is preservation. And I think we all know that development often happened to communities in the city and not with communities in the city. And I think that one way that you get past that when you make a change this massive is working through an open, small d democratic consultative process, working with the community, working with the academy, working with experts. And I think that we've all seen how open this process has been in coming to some of the specific decisions, including the one that we're contemplating tonight. But I think the other idea, the other that's problematic in Annapolis, or tricky because it means so many different things to people, is preservation. Because in a city that's beautiful and this old, we always have this question of what we owe to the past. For me, as a historian, something that's helpful when I write about Annapolis is sort of recognizing that it is a made-up city. Baltimore was always a better port. It had better access to the Ohio basin and the Delaware basin. St. Mary's had better access to the Atlantic economy. Annapolis was a compromise. It was a political decision, this place that we all love, where we all live. And to me, that means that we get to make these decisions in every generation. There is no sense of the path of history. Every single year of history is people making individual decisions, trying to deal as best they can with the environment that they're given. I think we all recognize that the environment that we're given is changing, and this is a very specific adaptation with some urgency attached to FEMA funding to a challenge that Annapolitans in the past didn't face. And I think it is easy to pick a specific period in the past and say this was Annapolis. I'm nostalgic about the Annapolis of my childhood. It was still a working dock. There were still, active oyster boats there when I was a kid. That parking lot that's going to change is where I got my first parking ticket. But I think that it is hard to imagine a process more thorough than this one and more open than this one. But I also think that it requires, when you make a change, the significant when you think about changing the profile of the city by raising elevations, that we trust ourselves in the way that Annapolitans in the past had trusted themselves to make decisions.
Thank you. Thanks, Brendan. In favor. Matt Fleming, please come forward.
Mayor Buckley, members of this council, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you again tonight about flooding mitigation and resilience. As the mayor said, my name is Matt Fleming, and I'm the director of your Resilience Authority, or the Resilience Authority for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, located at 44 Calvert Street in Annapolis. As you are probably tired of hearing me say, the Resilience Authority was established in July 2021 together by Anne Arundel County and the city of Annapolis to accelerate the pace and scale of infrastructure improvements needed to prepare, mitigate, and adapt our region to the impacts of climate change. But before joining the city and the county to serve as your Resilience Authority Director, I spent 25 years at the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, where I most recently served as Assistant Secretary for Aquatic Resources. Complementing these responsibilities, I served as Maryland's Coastal Zone Program Director or Manager for nearly 2 decades and was responsible for directing the state's programs addressing coastal resource management, resilience, and climate adaptation. This evening, drawing on my experience in that role, I'd like to speak in favor of Ordinance 1523 and the use of elevation as a flood mitigation strategy. Sea level rise is increasing and coastal flooding events are becoming more extreme, putting our communities at increased risk. This is especially true in areas like the city of Annapolis, having experienced the largest increase of any U.S. city in nuisance flooding days over the last 50 years. The built environment should be constructed to withstand the natural perils we know to exist. Public dollars spent on structure should only be spent once, especially when we know how to build and minimize those risks. In 2014, the state took action to enact the Coastmark Council and tasked them with adopting specific siting and design criteria to address impacts associated with sea level rise and coastal flooding in planning and regulating infrastructure, siting, and design for state projects. Through this council, we identified solutions to make roofs stronger, the structures better to withstand flooding, sea level rise, and severe storm events. The science of flood mitigation is more straightforward than any other natural hazard. Build higher or stronger or elevate. Redirect water through drainage or flood infrastructure projects, or when you can, get out of the way or relocate. If you look at the plan, I think all 3 of those strategies are reflected in the plan for City Dock. The solutions to make our homes, schools, businesses, and other structures stronger, safer, and more resilient to severe weather are not just knowable, they are known. Particularly at times when generational investments are making our housing and other, infrastructure greener, I'm encouraged that the city's efforts to ensure that the City Dock Resiliency and Revitalization Project is coupled with actions like Ordinance 1523 that will help to ensure that investments in infrastructure are sufficiently resilient to withstand noble risks. I thank you for your important work and appreciate the opportunity to share my comments on flooding mitigation resilience with you this evening.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, that's all the people signed up to speak. Would anyone like to come forward and speak on 01523? Please come forward. We truly appreciate everybody's comments. I see no movement. I declare the public hearing on 01523 closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we're starting with legislative actions, beginning with first readers. The first item is R3523, FY 2024 fines schedule correction.
Could I get a motion to adopt R35-23?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is R3923, 2023 City of Annapolis Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt R-39-23 on first reader?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say, Alderman Pendell Charles?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we're looking for this to be passed on third reader this evening, and I think it's been outlined.
I think this...
Do I have the wrong?
Yeah, this is not the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
This is just on first reader. Thank you.
Wait a minute, suspend the rules.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Would you like a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Alderman Gay, did you want to?
Okay, all those in favor of suspending the rules say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, is there a motion to adopt O-39 and 23 on second reader?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderman Shannon Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay? Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Aye. Alderman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
All yeses, it passes.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is Resolution R 4023, Director of Planning and Zoning, Christopher Jakubiak, I believe.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt R-40-23?
So moved.
Can I get a big second for that?
Second.
And we're going to take a vote, and I'd just like you to come up and say a few words if you'd like. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Jakubiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. I look forward to getting started. I've had very interesting meetings with most of you, and I've enjoyed those meetings and learned a lot. I have a sense of the challenges that lie ahead and the great opportunities that the staff presents to me as a team player. So I look forward to working with you and seeing you all soon. Great.
Thank you so much. And if your firm lets you go a little bit earlier, we'll take you early. So,
I'll do my best.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is second readers, beginning with Ordinance O 1523, Building Height and Elevation Limit Exception for FEMA Flood Zones in Annapolis.
Is there a motion to adopt O-15-23 on second reader?
So moved.
So moved.
Second, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move amendment number 1.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Can you elaborate on that, Attorney? Yeah.
Just very simply, to sort of dumb this down, if you will, we will have a new base flood elevation at City Dock. And putting on my engineering hat when this legislation was first introduced, I was a little concerned because there was no FEMA reference as far as map location, understanding that this is limited to City Dock and understanding the urgency. And I worked with Eric Lashinsky, Planning and Zoning, HPC, et cetera, to tie it in to a map that makes sense, and then also to tie it in to the existing code so that there's no concern. I think one of the key language here is that otherwise known as the new base flood elevation at the front setback, the resulting new elevation will be base flood elevation as defined in Title 17, 11.129. So for those of you who are anxious about this legislation, this amendment ties it into the existing code. And so this is not about raising height. It's very simply about establishing a new base flood elevation. And this Amendment 1 clarifies that, so thank you.
Thank you.
Eric.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderwoman Finlayson chairs the Rules and City Government, but as you know, she's not here. We worked long and hard both with Alderwoman Tierney, but also with the city staff, and I think we're all very comfortable with this amendment, and the Rules Committee did support it.
Okay, Alderman Savage.
Just to clarify, I don't know if I heard, did you say this is restricted to City Dock only?
It is the FEMA, the city, well, let me get the right terminology. It is the FEMA flood insurance map, which encompasses the site limits of the City Dock Resilience and Revitalization Project as defined in the City Dock Action Committee final report.
Well,
So I guess that's a long way of saying yes, it is the City Dock Action Committee scope of work, which is the public space.
I bring that up because I heard that earlier as well from the Historic Annapolis organization, but I think that's incorrect. Based on the reading of the legislation, it applies to the entire AE floodplain, Even as amended, if you look at the first sentence, buildings must comply with the FEMA flood management elevation requirement for AE flood zones are exempted from subsection C. It doesn't limit it to city dock. It does say the area included is found in the FEMA flood insurance rate map, which encompasses the site limits of city dock. I don't know. I guess the more I read this, I'm not entirely clear. Is the intention just to have this be restricted to city dock, or is it the intention to have it apply to the entire AE flood zone?
Yeah, no, it's not the entire AE flood zone. That would include, your shoreline as well.
But why?
I can get some clarification from Eric Lashinsky.
Why not have it apply to the entire AE flood zone?
Well, the amendment is pulled from the staff report. I mean, it's consistent with the staff report. The intent, and maybe the wording could be corrected, but the intent is in the amendment, as I understand it, is to focus on the city dock study area. But we need to tie it back to the FEMA flood insurance rate map that includes that area. So that's I can see where you're coming from, that it could be confusing, but the intent tied back to the staff report, staff recommendation was that we have to be clear about the FEMA flood insurance rate map, but the one that includes the city dock action report study area. So
why are you trying to restrict it only to the city dock area?
The whole intent of the legislation was to focus on the city dock small area plan, basically the area where the city dock project is happening.
I understand that's the intent, but why not have it apply to the entire AE floodplain? Flood zone?
When you cut into other parts of that floodplain, you deal with other zoning districts, other irregularities, that are just the nature of Annapolis. You get into complexities that require more scrutiny and different strategies for, the city dock study area is exclusively within the historic district overlay. It's in the Waterfront Maritime Conservation District. It's in a very finite area. It's an area that's been studied intensely. We haven't done the same level of study for the other areas outside of that. So that's really the basis for the recommendation.
Yeah, I think you could say that about city dock area too, but I still understand why it's just being restricted. But in any case, the language I don't think is very clear. If it's just restricting, I think you should have just said expressly in this that this is only applies to the area. But instead, it just says the area included. By saying it's included doesn't necessarily preclude anything else. It just says the area. I don't know. I mean, if the city attorney is confident with this language, that's.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Maybe I'm just nitpicking on a detail here, but the intention of the legislation is to restrict this application of this ordinance only to the city dock area. Which is defined by the site limits of the City Dock Resilience and Revitalization Project, as defined in the City Dock Action Committee final report. But the way that's worded, it says the area included is found in the FEMA flood insurance map, and it goes on through that restriction. The area included. Does that mean that, does that clearly enough limit it? Because I've heard some criticism from folks about why is this just limiting itself to City Dock and not the rest of the city? So,
Yeah, you'd have to ask the program folks about that.
but is that language, is that sufficient to limit it only to City Dock?
If the experts believe that it is, we would support that in whatever form you need us to support it. What's happening is we're trying to get FEMA to okay it. FEMA has said, say that, and that's what we're saying in order for it to apply to the city dock. In order to get the city dock improvements done in accordance with the FEMA regulations and restrictions and prohibitions, we have to use the language that FEMA's given us, and I think that's what the staff report provides.
Okay, I don't, this is not the language per se that FEMA's giving us. FEMA's giving us the exact floodplain zone, flood zone to reference, which is what we're doing, but I don't think it's worded well. But if you think it's fine, I'll move on.
Thank you. Alderman Gay?
Thank you. I have 3 really quick questions, and I appreciate all of the attachments that you provided. So just to piggyback off of what he said, but I'll just be very brief, because obviously from what I'm getting in the conversation is that with the AE floodplains, and particularly the one in the city dock, obviously, as you just mentioned, it's been studied. And so there is a certain level of expertise and an understanding of the history of that area. And the money is essentially already available. You just need this to move forward and accept that grant funding. And then you also provided a really good diagram in your slides as well, just showing essentially, you know, FEMA requirement of 7, the cities is 2, and then there's 4 in between that. So very easy to follow along. I appreciate that, and I understand that this is needed. My 2 other questions are, as he did mention, there is another slide that you gave on 6, it says National Flood Insurance Program. It has all of the AE zones, obviously on the Eastport side, which would include a little bit of 6, 8, and then 7. There has to be some sort of thought of equity in this, and I'm bringing that up in everything because equity has to be relevant in all conversations. As it appears, the wealthier ward within the city is getting the improvements, the physical infrastructure improvements necessary to preserve that area. Obviously, they have a lot of history there, but if you dig deeper, looking at the demographics in both age and race, it doesn't appear equitable when you look across at flood mitigation plans in the Eastport area. My question is after this project is underway, are you planning to do the same thing in the Eastport community so that there is equity within the physical infrastructure funding available from the federal government in preserving all of our communities?
Yeah, let me say first off that I know it might seem at first glance that you can see where you're coming from, but when you think about downtown and the level of value that it provides to the whole city, it's the economic center for the region, job center, tourism center. It's not, I wouldn't say it's benefiting certain property owners, it's benefiting the city, the region, the state, and I mean, it's the most important civic space in our city. So that's the way I see it. I think that's the way, you know, City Dock Action Committee that produced the whole plan saw it. That's why so much energy investment has gone into this project. In Eastport, I would say the most underinvested, disadvantaged communities in Eastport are actually not the ones that are most at risk. We do have several recommendations in the draft comprehensive plan for moving the conversation to Eastport once that's adopted. It is important to develop a resilience plan that's specific to Eastport, but it's going to be very different for the one on downtown. It's going to be very much focused on individual properties, street ends. It's a completely different landscape. So the focus on the downtown area is, I would say, probably been 30 years in the making, if you count the number of plans and studies that we've been doing. So we do need that same level of investment in Eastport. I think that would be the next step moving forward.
Awesome, thank you very much. And I think that's actually it for me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Savage.
Sorry, I'm going to bring this up again to offer a friendly amendment to the amendment, because I don't like how this is worded. If the intent is to restrict it limit it only to the City Dock area as described, again, currently it says, so unfortunately in the amendment, I don't have line numbers, so I'm going off of the original legislation. So it'll be page 2, line 14. So instead of saying the area included is found in yada yada, I would like to remove that and say the exempted area is limited to, and then it references the FEMA. So I think limited to is much stronger language than simply saying the area included. Because the area, again, the area included does not preclude anything else from being considered as a part of this. So if that's the intention, I'd like to propose that instead.
Okay, we need a second for a friendly amendment. Okay, great.
Okay.
Need a vote on that? Did we get the exact wording on that, Gina? Okay. You're good with that, Alderman Savage?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please.
I still don't know what the amendment is. Where is it?
It's an amendment to Ellie's, Alderwoman Tierney's amendment.
So what is it? and where
It's
is
on, if you look at the original legislation,
Page 2 of 2?
it'd be page 2.
Page 2, lines 15 through 17, and then lines 18 through 19.
On page 2?
Okay, so yeah, the language. Sorry, it needs another change, I think. Because if you read the amendment, it says the theme in blue, which is,
Right, I was on that.
you were on that. If you read the amendment, it says the FEMA flood insurance rate map, which encompasses the site limits of the city dock resilience as defined. I'm not quite sure. I think that encompasses should also be removed, which is limited to.
Wouldn't it be because it says city doc, or as defined in the city doc action committee final report, so wouldn't you be able to refer to that report instead of amending it?
Yeah.
I have nothing else to tie it into. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I understand. It's.
Are we guessing it really at this point?
I mean, I guess ultimately, we may be, I mean, this is going to be implemented by staff, so as long as they know what the intention is.
I think we know the focus area, and it is the city dock. It's defined as AE. I didn't really think this amendment was necessary, but we talked about the rules, and I'm comfortable with it, but I'm having a hard time understanding, looking at the amendment, what wording you would change of the blue part here, and I may be comfortable with that, but
I think
I
we,
just can't figure out what the amendment is.
I think we better say that.
Microphone.
Yeah.
Microphone, Ross.
The applicable area is found in the FEMA flood insurance, which is limited to the site limits of the city dock resilience project. I don't know, maybe I
Right,
don't
because
know
the
over here,
flood-
but it's just not,
the FEMA
from day
flood
one, I don't
maps-
think this legislation's been well written.
Yeah, otherwise, if you go to the FEMA flood maps, you're around the whole shoreline here with AE. So I had to define it as a city dock action committee. But it's a valid point as far as document control, as far as what is, when we're all not here, what did we actually define as this area? And it's kind of a weak boundary.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric, help me with this. I mean, is it defined,
I mean, I wasn't here when the CDOC action plan was completed, but when I look at that, there's a finite boundary to that study. That was the intent. As I understood the CDOC action committee's goals with that plan, and the intent was to focus on a finite area that is the area most impacted by sea level rise and flooding, has the largest economic and cultural consequence to the city if it's not protected. So that was really, that was my take on it in writing the staff report. Okay. I think, I think it will be interpreted appropriately by staff. I can tell you that. The intent here is, it is tricky, I give you that, but we have to tie it back to both the FEMA map and the City Dock Action Plan report, and so that's what we're trying to do in that wording. But,
okay, so I don't, if people think I'm going too far on this, let me know. But so I think what better language would be for that second sentence would be the exempted area is limited to the FEMA firm, which is restricted to the site limits of the City Dock Resilience, and you go on with the rest of it at that point. But I just feel like that's a lot clearer. The exempted area is limited to the FEMA firm, which is also restricted to the site limits.
Can I ask it this way? I see that the acting director DPW is here. We should know by now what the limits of the City Dock project is Burr, Mr. Vogel, director, yeah.
Burr, would you like to come forward? Alderman Tierney has a question for you.
I mean, this is basic, you know this is basic limits of disturbance, limits of construction. Is it defined somewhere other than, in my amendment, the scope of this?
Burr Vogel, Director of Public Works. Acting. I don't think so. I don't think there's another good document. The way that was written seemed to be the best we have.
That's the best way. When you contract out the City Dock project to a contractor, isn't there something that shows the limits of disturbance, limits of construction?
Yes, there will be. We just don't have that now.
Then we're not ready for this. Sorry,
And we could vote this down.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, if I could add.
Sure.
In the City Dock Action Plan, there are clearly limits for the project, and they're clearly laid out. I think and you can see that in the document itself, I think what Alderwoman Tierney was trying to do was tie this into FEMA and be more specific, which we had no issue with.
So have you fleshed out the friendly amendment, Alderman Savage? Did we get the final language on it? Because you have got a second, even without that language.
Just not getting a good answer.
I'll withdraw because I feel like the intention is made clear in the legislation. So I will leave it up to staff. It's going to be, I just think it's not the best language. I understand what you're trying to do.
Okay, withdraw it. Okay. He's going to withdraw that. Do you agree to that, Alderman Tierney? Thank you. So we're back to your amendment, and I think we've had discussion. Alderman Gay.
I did have the last question, I'm sorry. I was confused about what I asked earlier and the two comments from HBC and their relation to this legislation and any authority they may have. Because from what I heard, it seemed as if they had some. And I was confused at how that would interface with the legislation.
You have all authority.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that if there was a roadblock, obviously this is a priority project, I would hope that we would not allow the commission to, halt any progress. So.
You give them some authority and then you take it back when you need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Shanamar, you've been very patient. I apologize.
No longer relevant.
Huh?
No longer relevant.
Are you okay?
Yeah, just the question is no longer relevant, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a first and a second on the attorney amendment to 01523. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is there a motion on whether it's substantive? Let's see that. Is there a motion to adopt O-15-23 as amended?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt O-15-23 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the Alderman Savage.
Discussion. I do think we need to bring up Berta's house again, because that's been one outstanding issue, question, I should say, with all of this. You know, despite my nitpicking on language, I support this legislation, but there are concerns out there as far as Berta's house timing, you know, and I don't know if we want it. It's related to this, obviously, but it's not necessarily dependent on this legislation. So I think we might need to schedule some other kind of meeting, either part of a work session or just a separate meeting to discuss it. But the concern is that, again, the way this is worded is that the way that buildings are going to be meeting the new base floodplain elevation is by comparing it to raising the grade, right? That's how you're determining the base floodplain elevation, is looking at the adjacent grade. So the proposal from Berta's house is to put their building on pilings. And they can't currently do that with this, and they can't even do it with this amendment because they're basing the base elevation, well, they're not basing it off of the grade, the new grade, they're basing it off of kind of the old grade, I believe, unless the adjacent roadway is also raised up. And so my understanding is that they've been told that they can't get that approved because of the height restriction based on that calculation. And so what I suggested to them is if that still proves to be a point and we still see an issue and we see value in moving forward, then with Berta's house, then we can always pass a resolution to give them, like we have for other projects, we'll waive certain requirements so they can move forward if we need to. But so I think that's a solution for that. But the other question comes with timing, as well as how that project, if we were to give them a waiver, would tie into the overall City Dock project. And what I mean by that is if you have this new, Berta's house gets constructed, they're trying to get it done before City Dock, right? Before the overall larger project, because they don't want to have the historic building continue to keep flooding. I think that's been what they've been told by their other partners on this, that that they'd like to see us address that sooner rather than later. So if it is raised up on pilings, how is that going to tie in? Is that going to pose a problem when we come forward with our larger City Dock regrading effort? Are we going to be able to just regrade around those pilings? Or is that something that needs to get worked out as far as redesigning that?
So Eileen wanted to speak to that.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the effort Alderman Savage has put in to this somewhat complex issue. We, the city, became aware of this situation and then became involved in looking at the design of Berta's when we were contacted by the planning staff probably a month or so ago. Until that time, we on the City Dock team had not been involved. The planning staff believed that the project would not meet the zoning code, as the Berta's team had not looked at the underlying zoning, which was WMC. After quite a bit of detail, Bryce Turner, Eric, myself, what we have concluded, now this is based on the drawings we have received from the Berta's team, but we have concluded that with this ordinance, 01523, Burtis will meet the zoning. And that is predicated on Burtis looking at either a 7-foot or an 8-foot measurement for finished grade. Bryce Turner and I met with the Burtis team last week, and we were very clear because we had talked internally with our own design team, including the engineers, the architects, Public Works Director, that the city would like this to be a cohesive area. If you think about it, you'll be coming up on Prince George Street. There'll be a slight elevation on Prince George Street for the park, and this entire area will be graded at the same level. It will also have extensive flood protection. So there will be a new flood protection barrier in front of the Burtis House. So the Burtis House does not need additional flood protection to be raised at a higher elevation. From the city's perspective, the city would like to see everything graded at the same level. Burtis will likely be put on pilings in the interim. We have talked with John Manassa and the planning director as recently as this afternoon to confirm that is not an issue. They will have 3 years that if they exceed the height limit because they're on pilings, they'll have 3 years to maintain that. I think initially the thought was that from the Burtis team's perspective, that the city would be languishing. I think the great thanks to the council, the city is not languishing, the city is moving ahead, and just as you saw with Hillman Garage, and certainly under Burr's direction, the city is very confident that the grading will begin in late 2024 and will be finished in 2025. So there may be a few months that Burtis would be on pilings, but in the long run, the city, this is the city's building, and the city does not want to see this building permanently on pilings so that it is higher than everything else around it. So that's the city's perspective. That is what we have shared with the Burtis team. And as far as we can tell, and we've looked at this with everything we've been given, there is no reason for them to exceed the height once this ordinance is passed.
So does that mean that, okay, so it sounds like you're saying if they do proceed with putting the building on pilings as they're currently proposing, I guess they would be in compliance if this legislation passes?
If they put it on pilings, it would be an interim solution. We, the city, have been very clear that the city, because this is the city's building, does not want this building to be on pilings permanently to exceed the height of everything around it. We want it to fit into the setting that is being created.
So what would you do during the construction of City Dock? The mass grading that's going all around City Dock? Are you talking about at some point when you finish the City Dock, when you're working on the City Dock project, raising the grade of everything else, what are you talking about doing to Burr's house at that point? At that point, Burr's house is going to still be sitting on pilings. Are you going to regrade around that building? You're saying you don't want it on, city doesn't want it on pilings, so are you going to regrade
City
around
does
it,
not
or are
want
you
it
gonna-
on pilings on a permanent basis.
Or are you removing, so what does that mean? Are you talking about removing the pilings at some point, or just regrading around the new pilings? I'm confused.
So I think it's a little premature because we haven't seen all of the construction plans on how we would phase everything. But just a couple of the options that we have. If we leave it on piles, we could build retaining walls around it and make all of the site grading work. That wouldn't be terribly hard. If we wanted to put Burtis House on grade and fill in underneath it, then we would have to move it out of the way at some point. So we really have not started close coordination with Preservation Maryland on the construction timing and some of these details.
Okay.
So there's just more work to be done.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like that needs to be done because we are hearing concerns from those partners about not being included in the process during, at least not for the whole process. And they're being concerned now because I guess, at least we're being told the original timeline was to get the Burtis House addressed this summer, but now that's not happening. But so anyway, I think that needs to get.
I completely agree. On Friday, I reached out to Preservation Maryland and said, could we get together and talk and work out just exactly these kinds of issues?
Okay.
What's your rule?
I-beams, pylons, Alderman Arnett, then Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is why I was confused about the earlier testimony. I think Ms. Fogarty has made it clear. It's our building, it's our plan, it's in our city dock, it's part of the FEMA zone that we're creating with this legislation. I think we're kind of getting distracted from the purpose of the legislation, which is to change to the new FEMA elevation. The Burtis House is in that AE zone. It will be in that elevation. Some of these details as we go through and actually carrying out the city dock plan are important for sure. And the preservation of the Burtis House, I think, is agreed on, is important. But I'm not sure that is relevant to this particular piece of legislation, which is changing to the new FEMA elevation. Everybody gets changed to that new elevation. So I'd just soon finish the third reader vote.
Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we just approved an ordinance that defined the area per City Dock Action Committee. Okay, very specific question. Is the Burtis House included in that area? That's a yes, no.
Yes.
Okay. Here's my second question. Who is the authority having jurisdiction over the Burtis House as we move forward? Because right now, somebody's spending a lot of money not coordinating with the city dock plan.
The city is the ultimate authority. There is an easement on the property from Preservation Maryland, so we would always, consider Preservation Maryland's perspective.
Who's the authority having jurisdiction over the Burtis House? Is it the city?
Yes.
The city, okay. So can we take those plans now and have them part of our overall grading? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we can kind of capture that.
Yes.
Right? I'm throwing a softball here. Okay. Because somebody's going to spend a lot of money doing something, and it's not going to work.
Well,
alrighty then.
It will work.
No, neither. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Shademeyer?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett? Aye. Alderman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Aye. Alderwoman Pendel Charles?
Aye.
Okay, that passes all yeses.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. City Attorney, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate everyone being here. Thank you for everyone's input. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is Resolution R3723, March on Washington's 60th Anniversary Commemoration Waiver.
Is there a motion to adopt R37-23 on second reader?
So moved. Second.
Alderman Savage.
But there's a question, I had a question about, I'll wait for the motorcycle to go by. There was a question about the intention, because this gives an exemption, right, to the current code, which restrict special events, the number of special events downtown to, how many is it? The current.
One per month.
The current
One per month.
one per month. So we're granting an exemption, but I guess what I'm curious on is what was the intention? Anybody know the intention of the original restriction to one a month? Is that just coming from downtown businesses or those?
We have some experience right next to you here, Alderman Arnett.
Yes, we, years ago, the city was inundated with requests for lots and lots of special events. Many of them were races. Many of them blocked streets for periods of time, took up parking and so forth. So we had a special events committee formed to meet with the business and with all of the different people who were interested in having events in the city. And we decided that we needed to create a balance so that we were not having all of the warm weather months taken up with special events, which do bring visitors to the city, bring goodwill to the city because the racers and so forth love Annapolis. We're a lovely city, but also give relief to the businesses who are trying to make a living. They said, one of the things they said was, why don't we try to encourage all these events in the non-warm weather months, which we tried to do, and let's have a limited number of special events and let's not have one on top of the other. And so we passed the original special events legislation. We have added a couple of special events to that. One of the advantages of being added as a city-sponsored special event is you can get your fees waived. But there is a question of maintaining the original compromise, which was a balance between business as normal and outside entities, not outside necessarily outside of Annapolis, but non-business entities using downtown. In my email to my constituents, I put this question to them, what did they think? And I got a majority of the people saying, this is a one-time only, you can only have a 60-year anniversary once. And so this particular waiver, but they agreed with the notion, many, the ones who wrote, agreed with the notion of not overwhelming downtown businesses with a lot of events. So that's kind of the short version of the background. It went on for months.
Alderman Savage, does that answer you?
Yeah, well, yeah, and but this, I guess, as word is just a one-time waiver, right?
Thank you. Alderman O'Neill, then Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you very much. What I would like to say about this, it is a one-time waiver. It is technically a First Amendment opportunity, and it's going to go on whether we approve it or not. I think that we should be forthright in knowing that it's coming along so that we can be prepared safety-wise with our personnel, because they have the right to march, whether we say yes or not for the city dock.
Thank you. Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please add me as a co-sponsor.
Right. Madam City Clerk, can we call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Aye.
Alderman Stoudemire.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney. Alderwoman O'Neill. Aye. Alderman Pindell Charles.
Aye.
It passes.
All right, Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item.
The agenda is complete, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Can I just ask Director Dickinson, you did text me something. Is it too late to salvage that?
Yeah, I texted you about R35. That was the one that we were concerned with the timing of it. It's fixing the fine schedule that was passed during the budget process. There were 2 fines inadvertently taken off the drafting of it, and DPW noticed this and called it to our attention, and so we are attempting to get it corrected. And we had talked about trying to expedite that process so that we can charge the fine, because until we have it back into the fine schedule, we cannot charge the fine.
Point of order, didn't we pass that?
And I believe we sent an email around
I think
about.
we already passed that. Didn't we suspend the rules on that one?
Well, that's.
No, you suspended on 39, not 35.
Well, can't we make a motion
But
to
is
reconsider?
it too late for us to pick that up if it's an emergency or not?
No, you can do it. Just need a motion.
Move to suspend the rules to adopt our 39? 35.
So moved.
On second reader.
Thank you. So we can do that. I'm being told by the city attorney. So all those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Can I get a motion on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
On second reader, sorry. Got a second on that? We need a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderman Stoudemire?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Aye. Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
R35 has been approved, so we're done.
Okay, thank you. Now, do we have anything else for good order? Alderman O'Neill?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would like to say that the newest restaurant in West Annapolis on Annapolis Street, Agave, has opened its doors. They've got a soft opening this week, and they will be open for business.
Nice. Thank you. Alderman Gay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I think you may have addressed it in the beginning, but I missed it. Two things this weekend. Obviously, we've seen the newsletter from the individuals attacking the officers, and I just feel that it's important, and particularly as members of the public safety, we speak out in public of that. I didn't have details, and so I didn't want to make any blanket posts, but now understanding what we know, I do think it's unacceptable. You know, any time where people are on the streets to protect our communities and individuals are attacking them, you know, and I support the chief and his statements that he made on the news. I know he got some pushback from that, but hey, that is what it is. I mean, I don't know who thinks that they can attack an officer and not have to pay for their actions. And so wanted to make sure I stated that I support that in the public. And then also, we had a number of shootings in Eastport, you know, even one last night over the course of this weekend. We are working actively to try to fix this with the public safety, with our housing and human welfare, trying to come up with out-of-the-box solutions, obviously working very close with our Office of Community Services. And so for the public, I think it's important that they know that we are working on those things. But as my grandmother used to say, the devil doesn't take any days off. And so while we are actively trying to get ahead of this, crime is 24/7. You know, and so I know a lot of people are afraid. I've made it clear that if anyone reaches out to me, which people have, I'm able to take down their street, and I'm reaching out to the police department and saying, how many shootings or how many robberies or how many rapes have actually taken place in this community on this street? Because there is also a lot of misinformation being circulated as it relates to crime within the city. And so don't want to step on your toes, but just wanted to make that crystal clear from on my end, because obviously it's happening in my ward and people are looking at me like, what's going on? And so, yeah.
Thank you. Alderman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, Alderman Gay.
And I would just like to say to the officers, you know, on 4th of July, when we were at barbecues or we were out watching fireworks, these officers were working. They didn't get to sit down and watch the fireworks. They were all out there. So we truly appreciate their efforts there, and we have to stand by them. And it was quite shocking to see that, because the understanding was it wasn't just fireworks. They were called out for gunfire, and we have to respond to that, obviously. And so to get there and be treated like that, I think is sad, but we will hold people accountable for that, and we'll move on. Thank you. Alderman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I did send an email early this evening to your chief of staff as well as you for a meeting that I'm requesting with you. I met with the chief last week, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page and that we're all looking at solutions that will work. So thank you so much. The sooner the better.
Thank you. Okay, anything else for good order? That's it. Looks like no one else. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Can I get a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.